The world of the bold and the beautiful has always thrived on the uneasy tension between beauty and danger, between aspiration and obsession, between the promise of renewal and the shadow of past sins that refuse to stay buried. As the curtain rises on the Monday, December 22nd episode, the series once again proves that no moment of happiness is ever allowed to exist without consequence. This is not a story about isolated surprises or disconnected twists. It is a carefully layered narrative in which personal ambition, unresolved guilt, and emotional vulnerability collide beneath the glossy surface of fashion, romance, and family legacy. The episode's spoilers suggest upheaval on multiple fronts, yet the true drama lies not in what happens, but in why it happens, and in how each character's inner conflicts quietly steer them toward choices that may soon become irreversible. At first glance, the return of Dylan appears to be nothing more than another familiar soap opera device, a character resurfacing at a moment when the audience least expects it. Yet in The Bold and the Beautiful, returns are never neutral. They are never accidental. Dylan's reappearance carries with it the weight of unresolved trauma and unanswered questions, a reminder that the past is not something these characters can simply outgrow. Her presence immediately disrupts the fragile equilibrium that Elektra and will have begun to build, an equilibrium founded on shared grief, youthful optimism, and the belief that tragedy has finally loosened its grip on their lives. That belief, as the spoilers subtly suggest, may be dangerously naive. Elektra Forrester stands at a rare crossroads of contentment. After enduring the devastating loss of Luna Nozawa, she has entered what feels like a long-overdue chapter of stability. Living with Will Spencer, Elektra appears grounded in a relationship that offers both emotional safety and creative partnership. Their jewelry line is thriving, symbolizing not only financial success, but also Elektra's emerging sense of identity beyond the shadows of her family name. For once, she is not merely a Forrester by blood, but an artist in her own right, shaping something beautiful from pain rather than being consumed by it. The calm surrounding her feels earned, even deserved, and that is precisely what makes it so vulnerable. The specter of Luna's death still lingers, however, no matter how resolutely Elektra tries to move forward. Grief in The Bold and the Beautiful rarely fades cleanly. It mutates, disguises itself, and resurfaces in unexpected forms. Elektra may believe she has processed the trauma, but the arrival of Dylan threatens to reopen wounds she has carefully sealed. Dylan is not just a friend from the past. She is a living reminder of a chain of events that ended in death, confession, and moral ambiguity. Her presence forces Elektra to confront an uncomfortable truth. Closure may have been assumed, but it was never truly achieved. Dylan's history is soaked in contradiction. Once manipulated and imprisoned by Luna, she later confessed to killing Luna in what was presented as an act of desperation and self-defense. Yet the circumstances surrounding Luna's death have always felt unsettled, as though the truth itself were fractured into pieces that never fully aligned. Dylan's return reactivates those fractures, raising questions that no one seems prepared to answer. Was Dylan truly a victim pushed to the brink, or was she a participant in a darker, more calculated outcome? The show has never definitively resolved this tension, and that ambiguity now becomes the emotional fuel for what lies ahead. The spoilers hint at an almost unsettling normalcy in Dylan's reintegration into Elektra and Will's lives. A casual beach outing, shared laughter, an invitation to stay the night. These moments are deceptively simple, masking the potential danger beneath their surface. When Will suggests that Dylan stay over, the gesture reads as kindness, an extension of trust rather than suspicion. Elektra's initial surprise gives way to acceptance, motivated by a genuine desire to reconnect and perhaps to honor the past rather than fear it. Yet in the language of soap opera storytelling, such hospitality often becomes the doorway through which chaos enters. Dylan's motives remain deliberately opaque. Her need to stay close raises unsettling questions about her intentions and emotional state. Does she seek comfort, absolution, or something more corrosive? Her lack of an apparent home, Her sudden reappearance at a moment of emotional vulnerability for Electra and Will, and her willingness to insert herself into their domestic space all suggest an agenda that goes beyond friendship. In The Bold and the Beautiful, proximity is power. By positioning herself within their shared home, Dylan gains access not only to their trust, but to their weaknesses, their unguarded moments, and the quiet rhythms of their life together. Electra, for all her growth, may underestimate the psychological weight Dylan carries. There is a subtle but significant difference between forgiveness and forgetting, and Electra's willingness to welcome Dylan back may reflect a desire to prove that she has transcended fear rather than a genuine belief that the danger has passed. Will, meanwhile, embodies a different vulnerability. His empathy and openness, qualities that make him an ideal partner and collaborator, also render him susceptible to manipulation. Dylan's presence introduces a third energy into their dynamic, one shaped by guilt, survival, and unresolved trauma, and that energy threatens to destabilize everything they have built. While the younger generation grapples with the ghosts of the past, another storyline unfolds that speaks to a different but equally powerful theme: self-definition through independence. Katie Logan's fashion venture represents more than a business decision. It is a declaration of autonomy. After years of existing within the gravitational pull of Forrester Creations and the emotional complexities of her family, Katie's move toward launching her own brand signals a profound shift in how she sees herself and her worth. The yet-to-be-revealed name of her fashion label becomes a symbol of that transformation, a verbal embodiment of identity, purpose, and vision. Katie's conversation with Brooke Logan encapsulates the emotional complexity of this choice. Brooke's reaction is layered, balancing genuine pride with unspoken apprehension. She understands what this move means for Katie on a personal level, even as she senses the potential fallout it could trigger within the already volatile Forrester Logan ecosystem. Names matter in this world. They carry legacy, provoke rivalry, and signal allegiance. The possibility that Katie's brand name might challenge or provoke Ridge Forrester underscores the inevitability of conflict, even when none is explicitly intended. For Katie, the act of naming her brand becomes an existential struggle. She is not simply choosing a marketable label, she is defining how she wishes to be seen by a world that has too often reduced her to her relationships rather than her talents. The tension with Brooke and Ridge suggests that Katie's independence threatens the status quo, exposing how deeply entrenched power dynamics resist even the most peaceful forms of self-assertion. Brooke's concern is not rooted in jealousy, but in fear that Katie's departure from the familiar framework will further fracture a family already stretched to its limits. As this tension simmers, Thomas Forrester re-enters the narrative, bringing with him an entirely different kind of unease. Thomas's interactions with Hope Logan are framed around reassurance and professionalism, yet they are shadowed by a history that neither of them can fully escape. Thomas's attempt to calm Hope regarding his plans is outwardly measured, even earnest, but the subtext is fraught with ambiguity. In The Bold and the Beautiful, words are rarely just words. They are instruments of persuasion, control, and sometimes obsession. Hope listens, but her body language and emotional restraint reveal an undercurrent of apprehension. She has learned, often painfully, that Thomas's intentions can shift without warning, that his passion can blur into fixation. The question looming over their exchange is not whether Thomas is capable of focusing solely on fashion, but whether he is willing to relinquish the emotional power he has historically sought over Hope. His choice of language, his tone, and his need to reassure rather than simply inform all hint at a deeper struggle within him, a struggle between genuine professional ambition and the pull of unresolved desire. This ambiguity fuels the episode's psychological tension. Thomas's return is not overtly threatening, yet it carries the weight of possibility. The audience is left to wonder whether his involvement will reignite old patterns or mark a true evolution of character. The show deliberately refuses to provide immediate clarity, instead allowing doubt to linger as a narrative device. Hope's guarded response becomes an act of self-preservation, a quiet assertion that she will no longer ignore her instincts for the sake of peace. Taken together, These storylines form a tapestry of parallel conflicts. Dylan's shadowy return threatens the fragile happiness of Elektra and Will, introducing psychological danger into a space of apparent safety. Katie's bold step toward independence challenges familial expectations and exposes the cost of self-actualization within a legacy-driven world. Thomas's reappearance tests the boundaries between growth and relapse, forcing Hope to confront whether trust can ever truly be rebuilt once it has been shattered. Each storyline echoes the same underlying theme. The past does not simply fade, it waits. The December 22nd episode promises no explosions or grand confrontations, yet its power lies precisely in its restraint. The danger is subtle, emotional, and deeply personal. Dylan does not arrive brandishing threats. She arrives with familiarity and vulnerability. Katie does not declare war. She chooses a name. Thomas does not make demands. He offers reassurance. And yet, within these quiet gestures, the seeds of upheaval are unmistakably planted. As the episode unfolds, the audience is invited to question not only what will happen next, but how much of what is coming is already inevitable. Can Elektra protect her newfound happiness from the shadows of unresolved guilt? Will Will's empathy become his greatest weakness? Can Katie claim her identity without sacrificing her family ties? And has Thomas truly learned to separate love from control, or is history poised to repeat itself under a more polished guise? In The Bold and the Beautiful, beauty is never just aesthetic. It is emotional, moral, and fragile. The events of Monday, December 22nd, do not simply advance the plot. They deepen the characters' internal battles, reminding viewers that in this world, the most dangerous forces are often the ones that arrive smiling, bearing the promise of closure, opportunity, or reassurance. As always, the calm before the storm is where the Real story begins. At the heart of this renewed conflict stands Ridge Forrester, a man whose authority has always been inseparable from his ego. Ridge does not ignite wars with raised voices or dramatic gestures. He does so with decisions that feel, to him, entirely justified. By pushing people out, by asserting control rather than seeking consensus, he sets in motion consequences he rarely anticipates and almost never absorbs himself. This time, his choice to remove key figures from Forrester Creations is not merely a business maneuver, but a symbolic act, one that communicates who belongs and who does not. The cruel irony is that one of those swept aside is his own father, a man who once bridged the divide between Forrester and Logan, believing cooperation could temper rivalry. In Ridge's mind, this was a necessary purge, a reclaiming of order. In reality, it was a spark dropped onto dry ground. Ridge's decision reverberates most powerfully through Steffy Forrester, who now finds herself fully stepping into the role of enforcer. Steffy does not merely inherit Ridge's authority, she sharpens it. Where Ridge hesitates, Steffy acts. Where others question optics, she focuses on results. Accepting Ridge's challenge without hesitation, she makes the call that will define the episode, the firing of Deke Sharp. To Steffy, Deke represents disruption, sentimentality, and compromise, everything she believes has weakened the company in the past. Removing him is, in her eyes, not personal but corrective, a restoration of what she believes Forrester Creations should be. Yet no decision in this world exists in isolation. Deke's dismissal immediately pulls Hope Logan into the fray, and for Hope, this moment strikes at the core of her identity. Hope has long existed in the shadow of family conflict, attempting to be the bridge where others choose to burn. Her defense of Deke is not merely about love or loyalty. It is about resisting a system that repeatedly marginalizes the Logans under the guise of meritocracy. Hope's voice, however, carries less weight than it once did. Steffy holds the power now, and she wields it unapologetically, not only dismissing Hope's pleas, but doubling down by reinstating Thomas Forrester. Thomas's return is framed as redemption, competence, and inevitability. He is presented as a proven talent, endorsed by Zen Forrester and supported by Ridge himself. On paper, the decision makes sense. Thomas has delivered before. He understands the Forrester legacy. He speaks the language of dominance that Steffi respects. But beneath this logic lies a more unsettling truth. Thomas's reinstatement signals the quiet expulsion of the Logans once again. It tells Hope, without saying her name, that her place was always conditional, her influence always temporary. The cycle resumes, not because no one recognizes it, but because those in power benefit from pretending it is progress rather than repetition. As Hope absorbs this blow, the question of her departure begins to hover in the air, heavy and unresolved. Will she leave now, driven out by Steffi's authority and Ridge's silence, or will she hold on just long enough to be shattered by another revelation, one that arrives not from the boardroom but from her own family? This uncertainty mirrors the larger tension of the episode. Decisions are being made quickly, but their emotional consequences lag behind, waiting to collide. That collision comes through Katie Logan, whose storyline unfolds with quieter devastation but equal force. Katie's choice to accept Bill Spencer's offer and launch her own fashion house is not an impulsive rebellion. It is the culmination of long-suppressed frustration. Katie has spent years feeling sidelined, undervalued, and spoken for rather than spoken to. The irony of her situation is painfully clear. While others believed they were helping her, hiring a PR firm, making decisions on her behalf, Katie felt increasingly invisible. Like Eric Forrester before her, she was excluded from choices that directly shaped her future, all in the name of efficiency and care. When Katie tells Brooke Logan that she is leaving, the moment lands with a quiet but seismic shock. Brooke's reaction is layered and conflicted, as it always is. She does not like Katie's reasons, perhaps because they mirror truths Brooke has spent years denying. Yet she understands them, and that understanding hurts more than anger ever could. Brooke has built her life around the belief that she can balance love and loyalty, that she can stand between Ridge and her family without losing either. Katie's departure exposes the fragility of that belief. Brooke now stands once again at the crossroads that define her existence. On one side is Ridge, whose actions continue to fracture the very family Brooke is desperate to protect. On the other is Katie, choosing self-worth over compromise, independence over inclusion. Brooke's instinct, as history has shown, is to deny the fracture, to smooth over betrayal in the hope that unity can be restored later. But the cost of that denial is becoming impossible to ignore. Each time Brooke chooses Ridge, she loses another piece of trust from her family. Each time she hesitates, she risks losing Ridge entirely. The episode's tension builds not through spectacle, but through inevitability. Steffi's announcement to Hope that Deke is gone and Thomas has taken his place is not delivered as a threat. It is presented as a fact, immutable and final. The effect, however, is devastating. Hope's position becomes untenable, her faith in fairness eroded once more. The Forresters' close ranks, reinforcing a hierarchy that prioritizes bloodline and legacy over collaboration and innovation. What they fail to see or choose not to see is how brittle this unity truly is. As the fashion war looms, it becomes clear that this conflict is not about designs or branding but about identity. For the Forresters, fashion is inheritance, something guarded and defended. For the Logans, it is expression, something meant to evolve. When Katie steps out to build her own house, backed by Bill's resources and her own long-ignored vision, she represents a threat more dangerous than any rival designer, proof that independence is possible and that leaving does not mean failure. Brooke's shock, then, is not only about being caught between two sides, but about realizing that the ground beneath her has shifted. The familiar strategies, appeasement, patience, sacrifice, no longer guarantee stability. Ridge and Steffi continue to act with confidence, convinced that control equals survival. Yet the question lingers, heavy and unresolved. Will they awaken to the damage they are inflicting before their empire begins to crumble from within? The December 19th episode promises no easy answers, only sharper questions. Is Thomas's return truly a sign of growth, or merely a return to old patterns dressed in new justification? Will Hope finally choose herself over a system that repeatedly discards her? Can Brooke break free from the role of mediator long enough to stand firmly with her family, Or will she once again betray them in the name of love? And perhaps most haunting of all, will the Foresters recognize that power, when exercised without empathy, inevitably breeds the very opposition it seeks to eliminate? As another chapter closes, the bold and the beautiful reminds us why its conflicts endure. These are not battles meant to be won, but cycles meant to be survived, each repetition carving deeper emotional scars. The fashion war is merely the surface. Beneath it lies a story of belonging and exclusion, of voices silenced and reclaimed, of women choosing autonomy in a world that profits from their compliance. Whether this week ends in reconciliation or deeper division, one truth is unmistakable. The lines have been drawn again, and this time, the cost of crossing them may be higher than ever before. Stay tuned, share your thoughts, and return often for the latest updates, spoilers, and speculation surrounding this endlessly compelling world, because in this story, no choice is ever truly final, and every ending is merely the beginning of the next story.